Mike LeMay, you're pretty strong here. You suggest Pope Francis affecting this heavily. You call him the greatest gift to a godless one-world idea, that he worships climate change more than a god of spiritual change. His social justice contributes to this overall issue of humanism. You spared no punches when it came to Pope Francis.
Well, I'll tell you what, he seems to be a very gracious, likable man, but just like the World Council of Churches and the National Association of Evangelicals, Jan and Eric, he seems more concerned with saving the planet than he does saving souls.
Yes.
I mean, he's called climate change the greatest enemy to humanity. Well, we know sin is the greatest enemy to humanity.
Yes.
So this isn't a Catholic or an evangelical or a Baptist thing. This is infiltrating every religion and even some non-Christian religions, leading to this one-world religion of worship of the Antichrist, which I think at its very essentials is humanism.
If you're not going to preach the supernatural gospel, you got to have naturalistic idols or issues that need to be fixed, and you're just supplanting one thing for another. The problem is the wrong thing is now in place in most churches.
I don't want to quite leave National Council of Churches that now that it's been raised. I have in front of me just a paragraph. It's from David Horowitz's Discover the Network's website, and he's writing on the National Council of Churches, and the article says, since its founding in 1950, the New York City-based National Council of Churches, by the way, parent organization here is World Council of Churches, has remained faithful to the legacy of its predecessor, the communist front group known as the Federal Council of Churches, which the National Council absorbed in 1950. At one time, an unabashed apostle of the communist cause, the National Council of Churches has today recast itself as a leading representative of the so-called religious left, adhering to what it has described as liberation theology, that is, Marxist ideology disguised as Christianity. The NCC lays claim to a membership of 36 Protestant, Anglican, and Orthodox Christian denominations and some 50 million members in over 140,000 congregations. And then he closes, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the NCC has soft-pedaled its radical message, dressing up its demands for global collectivization and its rejection of democratic capitalism in the garb of religious teachings. Yet the organization's history suggests that it was and remains a devout backer of a gallery of socialist governments. Mike, this plays in heavily, correct, the NCC and World Council?
Oh, it absolutely does, Jan. And when you start peeling the onion back here, as David Horowitz did here with the National Council of Churches, and look at the basic principles upon which these organizations were formed. But really sad thing to me is you look today, and more than half of people under the age of 30 find nothing wrong with Marxism or socialism. So our education system has really soft-pedaled Marxism as socialism, or what we might call liberalism, and you've got a whole generation of youth right now that say, what's wrong with that? And when you've got organizations like the National Council of Churches and a Pope in Rome that are feeding into that agenda, it's no wonder our young people are being confused and misled.
Well, plus you got the whole millennial mindset, too, that pushes exactly toward these things, whether it's in church or not. Interesting that the National Council of Churches is really Marxism with a church setting.
And what I said in things I wrote analyzing the year 2016 is that a lot of churches, it doesn't matter if they're evangelical, doesn't matter if they're religious left, doesn't matter Catholic, they focused more on open borders and multiculturalism than anything else in 2016. Right. And Mike, this is partly contributing to the discussion that we have today on humanism.
Oh, absolutely it does, Jan. And, you know, it's in education, it's in the media, it's in federal government, and we are just slowly being indoctrinated into humanism. And they're doing it, quite frankly, to dumb us down, to help us react like animals instead of thinking like human beings, so we can be easily manipulated and controlled. And that's the path we're headed. And we just hope that the Lord is graceful and gives us some more time to start rejecting this Marxist thought and go back to biblical thought.
Well, let's move on to the issue of education. I teased with that little soundbite of Dr. Ron Rhodes, reminding us that our education system has been corrupted, something terrible, and quite frankly, at taxpayer expense. And I just want to head here for a few minutes because, Mike, you bring out that John Dewey is the father of the public education system, an avowed humanist, an avowed communist. Talk to us just a little bit about how this happened and when.
Well, the big impetus, as I mentioned, was when Lyndon Johnson took over education with the federal government in 1964. And the Teachers Union, the National Education Association, is an interesting, very powerful political entity. Interestingly, Jan and Eric, 2 years ago, they always have suggested reading for their teachers. 2 years ago, their suggested reading, Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
You're right.
Bob Shanine, who was their outgoing president a couple of years ago, let me read a quote. "It's not because we care about children. It's not because we have a vision of a great public school for every child. The NEA and its affiliates are effective advocates because we have power." And then in 2011, and I won't read the whole quote, but NEA spokesman Diane Schneider went to the United Nations and basically said, "We have got to help our children overthrow the antiquated beliefs of their parents and religion and understand that sexuality is fluid." And these are the things that are being taught in our school, and it is just literally corrupting the thought process of millions of American children.
Is the root of the problem the NEA, National Education Association? And if so, what is the agenda of the NEA? Keeping in mind, there are some Christian teachers out there who probably wouldn't go along with what I think you're going to say, Mike.
Well, and I thank God for those Christian teachers, Jan, men and women. I know dozens of them who are doing the best they can in a very tough situation. And I think the NEA is the current power broker, if you will, of education in the nation. It's a puppet maker, a kingmaker in many ways. Its endorsement of candidates goes a long way. You know, we go back to Lenin in the early 20th century. Lenin, who said, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I plant will never be uprooted." Well, our children now have between 12 and 16 years of being indoctrinated into Marxist humanism, and it's no wonder after 16 years of indoctrination, those are some very, very hard things to unlearn.
You know, this is really getting kids ready, and one of my questions I had written down was, do you believe that humanism is the Antichrist pure one-world religion? When I say pure, of course, I mean, is this going to be the driving force behind it? I think the answer is yes, but I wanted your comments on it, and really, we're watching our kids be educated for it. It's pretty amazing, and again, my hat's off to the Christian teachers who are trying their best to pick around through the stuff that they're given to teach and be able to teach it in such a way that they don't advocate these things and of course try to get absolute morals and absolute principles into their students' minds and lives as well. But it's a tough road to hoe. I have one of my board members as a teacher, and he's beside himself trying to figure out what to do with Common Core and also with all the other things and the lack of respect in our schools. So it's a very, very troubling thing today.
Here's the problem. Let's say we manage to defeat Common Core. All the progressives do is repackage it and give it another name. And one of the things I mentioned in my book, and this is very sad, but progressives tend to be more strategic than we who are conservatives. We as conservatives look at the next immediate election. Progressives are very patient.
Right.
So if Common Core does manage to get uprooted by this administration, it's just going to come back at another time with a nicer, fluffier little name on it. So we've got to be vigilant, and we've got to understand the core issue is self-worship, it's humanism, and it's going against biblical principles and teaching. I agree with you. I think the final world religion is humanism. How else does the Antichrist and the false prophet unite people with various beliefs about who God is? By convincing them we can be our own God, just like Satan tempted Eve and Adam in the Garden of Eden.
To Genesis chapter 3, this is all about whether the Bible is true or not and whether God is God or not.
Great insight. I appreciate that.